ready? Why not? Yeah, there we go. Put it closer to you. Good morning, Jane. You call the roll.
Regent Bartel. Regent Bailey.
Present.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Drew. Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Salvo.
Here.
Regent Higgins.
Here.
Regent Drybar. Here. Regent Mennydeed.
Here.
Regent Milner. Here. Regent Pointers. Here. Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Roberts.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Tyler.
Here.
Regent Vasquez. Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Whitburn.
Here.
Quorum is present.
You are here. The minutes of the March 7th, 2013 meeting have been distributed. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The reports for the Higher Educational Aids Board, Hospital Authority Board, and Wisconsin Technical College Board have been provided. Any questions or comments on those? All right. Well, for the past several months, a major topic in my report to the board has been the status of the transfer searches in the UW system. I'm pleased to provide the following update this morning, pending the results of our deliberations in closed session later this morning. I think I can say safely that there are no searches going on. That's correct over there. If I look over to my left, I don't know of any searches that are going on. As everybody, I'm sure everyone knows, President Riley recently announced and formally recommended new leaders for both UW-Madison and UW-Eau Claire. Dr. Rebecca Blank, acting U.S. Secretary of Commerce, has been recommended as the next chancellor of UW-Madison, and Dr. James Schmidt, who several of us met the other night, has been recommended as the next chancellor of UW-Eau Claire. Dr. Schmidt currently serves as Vice President for University Advancement at Winona State University and is Executive Director of the WSU Foundation Board of Trustees. The naming of these new campus leaders is exciting for everyone in the system and has involved many, many hours of hard work by a lot of people, including members of this board. And at this time, I'd like to thank all of those involved with the search processes for their commitment. And we look forward to the new era about to unfold at UW-Madison and UW-Eau Claire. Especially want to recognize Richard Mennydeed, who is the head of the Eau Claire search, Richard Pruitt for UW-Madison search, and also a special nod to Regent Higgins, who filled in at the very admirably at the last minute on the UW-Eau Claire effort. So we'll talk more about that, I think, in closed session, and hopefully approve both of those chancellors. We'll come back to the budget in a minute. Later this month, some other news. Regent Tim Higgins will join Chancellor Hardin and Chancellor Wells in hosting a power breakfast. That's what I'm told that it's going to be called. In keeping with our Knowledge Powers of Wisconsin theme, the event will involve legislators, business leaders, and campus representatives in northeast Wisconsin to discuss UW's role in boosting the state's economy and how the state budget will fuel that effort. Look forward to that. I know that many of the members of the board have been reaching out to state legislators through phone calls and face-to-face meetings on the state budget. I want you to know how important that work will be to our success in the budget. In fact, one member of the Joint Committee on Finance, Senator Mary Lazich, took time following President Riley's testimony to commend Regent Milner for her effective outreach to her. As President Riley and I said yesterday, the budget is a work in progress, and it appears that this group has taken up that hard work with great enthusiasm. And I will turn it now over to President Riley.
Well, thank you, President Smith, and good morning, everybody. Good to see you all. I wanted to start this morning with a bit of news from around the system. UW-Madison is celebrating a milestone this year with the graduation of its 400th fusion-related PhD student. Dating back to the 1960s, UW-Madison's fusion program, which studies the reaction when atomic nuclei collide, fuse, and release energy, is among the largest and most widely respected university programs in the United States. Fusion-related research at UW-Madison now spans 3 departments in 2 colleges, including more than 150 faculty, staff, and students, and covers a range of theoretical, experimental, and technological aspects of plasma science and fusion. Since the 60s, fusion-related research in the UW-Madison departments of physics, electrical and computer engineering, and engineering physics has garnered more than $100 million in funding. In addition to campus-based research, UW-Madison faculty, staff, and students also play major roles in national and international experiments, such as ITER, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. So hats off to Interim Chancellor Ward and the UW-Madison campus, and keep fusing. UW-Superior is pleased to share the news that Dr. Richard Stewart, a transportation and logistics expert, has been named to the first Great Lakes Advisory Board of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Dr. Stewart is chair of the Department of Business and Economics and director of the Transportation and Logistics Research Center at UW-Superior. Now, those of you who attended the board meeting up in Superior last spring may remember his presentation. Dr. Stewart will be one of the 18 members of this new board, which will play a part in advising how the EPA spends some $300 million in restoring the Great Lakes for future generations. As Dr. Stewart explained, quote, "I was born in and spent most of my life in Great Lakes states. The lakes are one of the most precious assets in the world. Keeping these inland seas fresh and clean and environmentally healthy is critical to our nation's overall health and the health of the ecosystems that surround the Great Lakes," end quote. So congratulations to Dr. Stewart, to Chancellor Wachter, and UW-Superior. UW-Platteville has just recently received the results of a study it commissioned on the university's economic impact on the region. It is estimated that UW-Platteville had a $275 million economic impact in southwest Wisconsin in 2011-12, and a total impact of $394 million on the entire state. Households of UW-Platteville employees spend an estimated $62.1 million for goods and services in the area, while students spend $50.4 million and visitors $7.8 million. The university itself spent $3.1 million for supplies and capital equipment in the region, and another $800,000 for building construction. So we always suspected that Chancellor Shields was a big spender, and this study confirms that. But this is an aspect of our institutions that we don't think of often enough. What incredible economic drivers they are because they're there, and the spin-off economic benefit to people who have nothing to do with the university and the regions around them and across the state. From UW-Parkside, Sandra Moats, an associate professor of history, is among a handful of scholars recently named to the inaugural class of fellows at the new Fred W. Smith National Library for the study of George Washington at Mount Vernon. Professor Moats, who will be living on the estate at Mount Vernon for 5 months, will have access to everything in the new presidential library. She notes that Washington's original personal papers have not been as easily accessible to scholars as those of our third president, Thomas Jefferson, for instance. But the new library should help to change that. "We sort of take Washington for granted," Moats told the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel in a recent story. "People think of him as a marble man, a monument, or a statue. But there was a reason he was cautious and controlled," unquote. Dr. Moats plans to write a book about Washington's role in American neutrality following the Revolutionary War, a time when the country was establishing its identity. We'll look forward to hearing more about that. Meanwhile, congratulations to Dr. Moats, Chancellor Debbie Ford, and UW-Parkside. UW-Stevens Point reports that starting this fall, it will offer an undergraduate wildland fire science option. But they aren't waiting until then to get to work. Last month, teaming up with the DNR, about 24 students at UW-Stevens Point were out learning how to use water pumps, locate hot spots, and put out brush fires as part of being certified as basic wildland firefighters. With drought and dangerous wildfires an increasingly difficult challenge nationwide, the need is only going to grow for those kinds of talents. In the past year, 11 people died in wildfires nationwide, and last November alone, more than 9 million acres of forest, brush, and grassland were lost in fires. This summer, some of these same UW-Stevens Point students could be part of crews trying to control wildfires out west. Quote, "If you see fires on the news, there's a chance there's a pointer there with them, said Associate Dean Paul DeRusca from the College of Natural Resources. So hats off to Chancellor Patterson and UW-Stevens Point and those brave students. UW River Falls reports that its newly constructed Jesse H. Ames Suites exceeded even their own expectations when the living space was recently awarded the prestigious LEED Gold certification from the U.S. Green Building Council, recognizing high performance and environmentally responsible projects. So we want to know, Dean, do you have one of those big round pieces that Joe has? You're going to get one. All right, well, that's good. We'll look to see yours. Construction of this facility, which had originally aimed for silver certification, includes more than 16% recycled materials, with a quarter of the materials used being regionally harvested, and 70% of the wood used being Forestry Stewardship Council certified. Renewable energy certificates, low-flowing plumbing, and rooftop solar hot water panels result in a nearly 32% annual reduction in energy usage and 27% savings in energy costs. All that, and it gets high marks for friendly living space, too. Outdoor gathering spaces include a fire pit and a barbecue grill, rain gardens, and a boardwalk that protects adjacent wetlands. So congratulations to Chancellor Van Galen and the UW River Falls community on that. UW-Stout recently had the formal dedication of its new digital fabrication laboratory, better known as the Fab Lab. This sounds a little like going back to the 60s with Chancellor Sorensen, the Fab Lab. The lab offers users computer-controlled machines and equipment that employ many types of materials to create a wide range of products. They are then connected across the globe by a communications network that allows users to share files and other ideas for the products they want to make. UW-Stout's Fab Lab, which is part of a multi-institution research project through the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, was established by the Discovery Center, UW-Stout's umbrella organization for applied research, outreach, and economic development, and with the assistance of a multi-year $520,000 Growth Agenda Award from the UW system. I think most of you will remember our learning about the Discovery Center when we were up at the recent meeting at UW-Stout, although I know most of you remember the wine tasting more than the Discovery Center. The idea behind the open Fab Lab environment is to remove barriers such as access to equipment and technology while serving as an incubator for applied research, innovation, job creation, and economic development. Manufacturers, we know, often report having a hard time finding students with the skills they need, but Fab Labs are expected to be an important part of developing that workforce. So congratulations to Chancellor Sorensen and UW-Stout. UW-Milwaukee scientists are joining colleagues from 5 other institutions for a landmark study of ultra-high energy cosmic rays, the world's rarest and most energetic subatomic particles. Apparently, it is the first time the particles will be recorded from space as they collide with the Earth's atmosphere. Discovering the sources of the particles' acceleration could offer insight into high-energy astrophysics and the origins of the universe, experts say. With a grant from NASA, the 6 teams will do the advanced work necessary to launch a telescope that will be mounted on the International Space Station. That launch is scheduled for 2017. UWM's role is to coordinate development of the common software framework that all the collaborators will use for analysis. The software for the missions analysis repository will be written by UWM senior scientist Thomas Paul. So that's very exciting stuff. So kudos to Chancellor Lovell and UW-Milwaukee. UW-Eau Claire boasts a strong athletic tradition, but the university's most successful team does not conduct its business on the court or at the field or in the pool. Instead, the winningest blue-gold team works its magic in business attire behind a podium. The UW-Eau Claire forensics team has now parlayed a winning formula and a tradition of excellence into 21 straight state championships and 22 individual national championships. In a competition with no division brackets to separate small and large schools, the Eau Claire team consistently ranks among the top 10 in the nation. Just recently, this year's team, despite a high proportion of freshmen, won state individual titles in 7 of 11 categories, and 16 members of the team have qualified about 60 speeches for 3 major national tournaments later this month. So at a time when surveys indicate many Americans consider public speaking their #1 fear, this is no mean feat. So congratulations to Interim Chancellor Gilles Bousquet. He was over there before, I thought, but maybe there he is. Okay. And UW and the UW-Eau Claire campus, and whatever you do, don't get into an argument with them. I also want to call your attention to something that's in your packets this morning, the Wisconsin Viz publication. The UW system is one of several key sponsors of this publication. It's the magazine-like one in your folders. And as you'll see, we figure very prominently in it. If you turn to the tab pages, I think it may be the blue tab, starting on page 66, you'll find an 8-page color spread highlighting our Knowledge Powers Wisconsin campaign with cogent facts and testimonials about the power that UW brings to the state's economic engine. The magazine also has articles focusing on UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee, as well as on our new flexible option program. As Dave Giroux explained in earlier presentations to this board, the Knowledge Powers Wisconsin campaign is a rebranding of our strategic plan, focusing on building a stronger workforce, stronger businesses, and stronger communities. And it's important that we tell that story. Wisconsin Biz is part of the state's economic development marketing plan, that is, of the state's economic development marketing plan. Will be distributed widely to CEOs and other business people, not only here in Wisconsin, but in neighboring states. Copies of the publication are also being sent to all campuses for distribution and display. Also, just a reminder of UW System's upcoming 10th annual Posters in the Rotunda at the state capitol on Wednesday, April 17th. This event, which is a celebration of undergraduate research, showcases the incredible work of more than 100 outstanding student researchers and their faculty advisors from across the UW system. It's an important opportunity for students to share their research findings with legislators, with UW alumni, and other supporters. So if you have not attended that event in the past, we encourage you to check it out. I'm sure you'll be impressed if you get there. It's a very heartening day to see the enthusiasm and the accomplishments of these very young people working, undergraduates working with their faculty advisors from all over the system, every kind of institution in the system. And it also reminds us that good research and good teaching do not have to be enemies of each other. They can indeed be very complementary. So finally, President Smith, our March meeting was too early, I thought, for a St. Patrick's Day poem, so I thought I should probably make up for that in some way this month. I know Heidi McPherson, the provost at La Crosse, wants me to do the wasteland this morning. April is the cruelest month, but I think that would be too heavy this early in the morning, Heidi. So St. Patrick's Day is a celebration, among other things, of immigrants and immigration to this country. And all 4 of my grandparents were immigrants from Ireland, and 2 of our 3 kids, some of you know, are also immigrants, having been adopted from Colombia. And there's a lot of debate about immigration policy in America going on right now. So I thought I'd read you a brief piece that ties immigration in the American context to adoption in a way that honors both things. And all immigrants, after all, have to adopt the country they come to in some level. And I think this little piece has some of the eloquence and elegance and uplift and force of good poetry. So a substitute for a poem this morning. It's from a long 20-year-ago little piece in actually the New Yorker magazine in the front, an anonymous piece in their comment section, and it goes like this. The United States might be said to have a special interest in the maintenance and repair of adoption. Metaphorically, at least, adoption is what made America great, for America's very nationhood is adoptive. The vast migrations that populated this continent, the uprootings and replantings and recombinings of people and peoples, sometimes in sorrow, sometimes in hope, that far more than ties of biological kinship created the American nation, can be seen as an historical experiment in mass geographical adoption. Perhaps this helps explain why terms like fatherland and motherland give Americans the creeps. And while we honor old ties, a substantial part of our very identity consists in the ability to transcend them with new ones, in the power the heart has over the blood. So I think that's a perspective on immigration that St. Patrick himself would like, having been, according to his confessions that he wrote, been kidnapped into slavery from his home in Britain by Irish raiders when he was about 16 years old, and winding up then as the iconic image of that place he had been kidnapped to into slavery. So who says a 5th century Irishman can't have implications for 21st century America? President Smith. So that's the end of my report. We can go right into the MOOC part of things if we like. All right, well, we're going to follow up your discussion yesterday, very helpful discussion by Bob Hoare on the MOOC that is being offered here at UW-La Crosse on remedial math. So a little broader discussion of MOOCs today. We know there's lots of interest nationally, internationally about this phenomenon. It's relatively new. President Smith in particular thought you would enjoy delving into it a bit this morning, and I'll get us started. Let me say I'm the farthest thing from an expert in this area. We have people here who are much more expert than I. Bob Hoare, who talked with you yesterday, Ray Cross and Aaron Brower on the extension side, who are working with MOOCs in the context of the Flex option, which you'll hear more about in a few minutes. Jeff Russell is with us, the Dean of Continuing Studies at UW-Madison and Associate Provost there, who's been in the middle of putting their MOOC activity together. So a few thoughts about this, and then I hope we can get a good dialogue going and involve, again, them and other people who, as I say, know more about this than I do. So thinking a little bit about how one might define a MOOC, a simple way to do it might be to say it's a packaged online course put up on a software platform that can reach large numbers of people around the world. When I was talking with Aaron about this, Aaron Brower, he likes to make an analogy to a textbook, to MOOC as Google World Textbook, he was telling me. And why? Well, it kind of packages information in clear and quality ways like a textbook does. Textbook is another kind of packaging, right? And both with a MOOC and a textbook, you can consume them in the same way. You can view individual lectures or even sections of lectures in whatever order you want in a MOOC, or you can, in a textbook, read chapters or sections in the order that you want them. There's a little longer definition of a MOOC, which I thought was thought-provoking, which appears in an article by Kenneth Green in a recent January-February number of the Association of Governing Boards magazine. So here's his definition of a MOOC. MOOCs are massive, very large enrollment, open, no admission standards, no prerequisites, online courses. Enrollments that exceed 20,000, 50,000, or even 100,000 students for a single course are not unusual. MOOCs are also, for the moment, typically free. Students pay no fees to register or for participation in the course. Also, MOOCs currently do not offer official college credit. Just because you completed a MOOC on artificial intelligence, entrepreneurship, or another topic taught by a professor from Harvard or Massachusetts Institute of Technology or Stanford does not mean you can take your certificate of completion, if available, to those institutions or others to receive college credit. In addition, MOOCs are generally offered and managed by third-party organizations such as Coursera or edX, Udacity. These are either companies, some of them for-profit, others non-profit, or organizations that are putting these online courses up on these massive platforms. Some of these companies do have formal relationships with post-secondary institutions, and Jeff might want to talk a little bit about his with Coursera at UW-Madison, but they not all do. And finally, we do know that course completion rates, and Bob Hoare mentioned this yesterday, for MOOCs are really very low so far. Frequently no more than 5 or 10% of the students who register go on to finish the course. However, if you have 160,000 students registered and you have 5% complete, that's 8,000 students that faculty member gets to interact with throughout a course, and it would take most faculty members a pretty long time teaching on a campus to interact in their course, teach their course to that many students. So that's part of the definition of MOOCs. Let me just briefly summarize what we're doing related to them across the UW system. I won't say much about the La Crosse remedial math MOOC because you heard about that yesterday. One of the questions that I think you had, Regent Smith, and everybody has, we all have, is, well, what's the business plan for this? How do we make this work? We know it's not free to develop it and put it out there, although students don't have to pay for it now. And, a simple answer is we don't have a clear business plan. It's developing. It's too early to have one. But for instance, with La Crosse, with their 1,900, almost 2,000 students now, Bob told me in some notes he had prepared for another talk I gave that, for instance, if they were to charge each of those roughly 2,000 students $10 each, they'd have $20,000, and they thought that they could probably offer the course again in a similar format for $20,000. So there's the beginning, perhaps, of a business plan, or maybe not. Let me mention what Madison is engaged in here. You may have read about their partnership with Coursera. They've announced that the Madison campus, they will put up 4 pilot MOOCs that showcase a handful of UW-Madison's most interesting teachers. And Jeff slipped into your packets this morning a little description of those 4 courses. DeLuca was telling me yesterday, and he confirmed it this morning, Jeff did, that they are now up. If you flip over to the back page of this handout, they've got now over 22,000 students registered for these 4 courses, and 2 of them start in the fall, and 2 will be in the spring. And these, Jeff, you said, are students from all over the world at this point. So this is a way, in part, for Madison to promulgate its high-quality brand on a world stage, and also learn more about MOOC pedagogy along the way. The first 2 courses, Video Games and Learning, and a business course, Markets with Friction, will be offered this fall by Madison in the MOOC format. And then in spring 2014, Globalizing Higher Education and Research for the Knowledge Economy, 1 course, and Human Evolution, Past and Future, another course will be offered for a total of 4. None of the MOOCs will be offered for credit by Madison at this time, at least. Private funding at this time is being used to offer the courses, and this is a pilot effort by our colleagues at Madison to better understand the academic and the financial aspects of MOOCing. What are the standards for quality, evaluation plans, the learning platform requirements, faculty and learner support needs, what's needed to offer them for credit, what might a sustained business model look at. So I think it will be very exciting as the Madison effort comes on now, following the La Crosse effort to learn more as we go along in both of those. And then I'll mention another idea, which is much more at the idea stage. It involves UW-Milwaukee, and Mike Lovell and I have been working with the National Business Higher Education Forum, and they are looking to fund a limited number of projects that tie STEM degree production to the needs of local and regional business development, with a specific focus on building the pipeline of students who will have an interest in pursuing a STEM degree. And we're part of this BHEF effort now to do that, and we've talked to you a little bit about this in the past, working closely with them on a pilot that takes advantage of the strong water industry cluster that exists in and around Milwaukee, and the water research and technology expertise of UW-Milwaukee and their School of Freshwater Sciences, but in pockets around the system. Lots of our institutions doing things related to water. UW-Whitewater just happened to catch Dick, and he and his campus have gotten very involved in the Water Council now as well. But some who aren't involved in the Milwaukee Water Council, Renee and Superior mentioned the Great Lakes Transportation and Logistics Center, another kind of water expertise that we have in this system. So what's that got to do with MOOCs? Well, the concept needs fleshing out, but goes a little like this. The UW could partner with companies to build some water-related awareness and skills through a series of courses that the campuses might not have the expertise fully to build on their own, in order to provide a gateway into the industry for future employees who we hope to be in what is the growing water business in Wisconsin. And using a MOOC platform to do that would allow very efficient use of company expertise, would facilitate scaling of all kinds. At the same time, we've talked a little bit about perhaps building a parallel course for high school students, perhaps in the form of an early college high school course that could roll up into some type of water certificate. Again, pardon the pun, but part of this project is to get a pipeline flowing of younger people who would be developing the skills starting in school to work in the water industry in Wisconsin. This could build an awareness of water disciplines and careers and draw them into water-related majors. And I was just thinking, and we haven't made this connection as far as I know anywhere in my head, but a nice connection could be, if we get this MOOC on water going, that some of those students would need to take remedial math before they could get in and progress in some of the courses they need to go on into the water industry, and La Crosse might have just the ticket for them in doing that. So still very early on in this, but that I hope gives you some little sense of the variety of things that we're thinking about interacting with these new things we call MOOCs. So why, in my opinion, why all the MOOC fuss? I mean, this has really gotten the popular press's attention, the academic world's attention, lots of businesses' attention, lots of government's attention. Well, part of it, I think, is the massiveness of it, the ability to reach so many people with your course content in an organized way, in relatively quick time, across huge space. The massiveness and the reach of this across international borders, across class lines, across ages is startling. And it also does have, in the way some people who are working on it talk about it, a leveling effect. That is, if a really a disadvantaged young person living in a third world country can access and somehow the best coursework that the most prestigious American universities have, and can access it in a way that's fairly easy, that's free, does that change the world in some way? Well, maybe if enough of it happens, yes. And the low cost is, I think, another, to the consumer, is another reason these have gotten so much attention. Another reason still, I think, is what some of our colleagues at the Educational Testing Service have called the FOMO factor, the F-O-M-O factor. That is fear of missing out. We don't know where this train is going, but it seems to be picking up steam, and it seems to be going towards some pretty interesting places that have something to do with our homeland in higher education, and there's a sense that we'd better be on board at some level and hopefully be part of directing that building and acceleration. And for now, for us, I think MOOCs are one arrow in our flex option quiver. We can be part of the next big step in MOOC development, and I think this is one of the next big steps, by awarding credit through assessment of the knowledge garnered in them via the flex option. And there's lots of potential there for us. And I remind people that this MOOC effort builds on the 4,600 online courses we already offer in the UW system, builds on the 100 degree and certificate programs that we already offer fully online. This is not, in that sense, a breakthrough in kind. It's more of a breakthrough in scale, I would say. And you might be a little curious about what it feels like to take a MOOC if you're a student, or as Molly Bloom asks about another character in James Joyce's Ulysses, who's he when he's at home? So what's a MOOC feel like when you're at home with it? And I thought, since Andy Richards has been taking one, I'd ask him to talk a little bit for a few minutes about what it feels like to be a student in a MOOC. So, Andy?
Thanks, Kevin, and good morning. Yes, I am taking a MOOC, and it's called How to Build a Startup. And I didn't have any intention of actually taking a MOOC. Like many of you, I heard a lot about MOOCs. You're reading about it all the time. You're hearing about it all the time. Heard about UW-L and the incredible math MOOC that they have going on here. And I felt like I needed to learn a lot more about them. So I had heard of Coursera, edX, and Udacity, and thought, well, it's a good place to start. Why don't I check out some of their websites, learn a little bit about them. So I went to Udacity first because I just kind of like the name. I don't know why. And started checking out the website. You go there. Immediately, you see all these wonderful images of the courses that they're offering. And there's a few tabs off on the right-hand side, up higher, and it's about Udacity. It's the courses they're offering. It's how to sign up. And then, if you are signed up, how to sign in. So I thought, well, I'll play around a little bit with this. It's on my lunch hour, Kevin, and I'm doing a little extra research here. And still have a little salad left.
And there's no tuition remission necessary. That's the important.
So I went to the About page, and it talks a little bit about Udacity and why you might be interested in being a participant in Udacity. And it talks about high school students. And if you're a high school student, you might want to get a jump start on college, learn some of the basics of some classes you might be taking, learn some skills. And then it goes on to college students, and it says, well, there are some ways here, there aren't a lot of them yet, but to earn some credits and to do that in an affordable way. And then there's another group that they're targeting, and that's professionals and people who want to learn more about the area that they're currently in, or those who may want to change careers. And so I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. So I learned a little bit about Udacity, went to the courses, and they had 22 courses. They had them categorized in 4 different areas. One was math, another was physics, another was computer science, and the last was business. Well, I'm interested in business, and so I clicked on that, and I saw a class that said how to build a startup. I'm like, well, that sounds pretty cool. I have a little experience myself in economic development, have an MBA where we learned a little bit about entrepreneurialism and just how to do startups. So I thought, well, I'll click on that. Went to that, and it's great. It tells you, well, here's what we expect you to learn in this. Here's what you might need to know before coming into the class. There's a syllabus that lays out what they intend to teach you, and there's a little something on the instructor. And in this case, the instructor was a serial entrepreneur from the Silicon Valley who had taught at Stanford and Berkeley and Columbia and some other universities. I said, well, this is again looking pretty interesting to me. So I kind of keep on continuing on, and I thought, well, the only way to find out more about the MOOC and actually what I set out to do was to maybe see what that class really looks like. So I went to the sign-up button, which is a sign-up for all of Udacity, not just for that class, and I was really incredibly surprised by how simple it was and how quick it was. All I needed to do was put my name in, an email address, and a password, and I was in. There was no credit card, no social security number, how old are you, where do you live, none of that information was requested. And so I'm all signed in, and so I go to take that class, and I thought, well, registering for this class is going to be a little bit more complicated than that. I'm sure they're going to want more information or something. They need to find a way to make money off of this at least. And it wasn't. I clicked on the class, and I was taking the class. And they had nine lessons, and Aaron and I hadn't talked about it as a textbook, but that's exactly what it kind of felt like. It felt like I had 9 lessons with an introduction, with some nice topics in between. And those 9 lessons were broken up into little segments, about 2 to 4 minutes long. And so, and you had about 25 to 30 of those in a lesson. And so you really could just sit down for 2 to 4 minutes and do one little part of a lesson. Or if you had a little bit more of a lunch hour, you might be able to squeeze 4 or 5 of those segments together. And the segments they're not really interactive, at least not in this course. And they don't have tutors like at UW-La. So you really are watching videos and a digital whiteboard where they're explaining to you the concepts and drawing lines between the concepts for you. It's really quite engaging, and it was really quite enjoyable as well. And I just really found it to be very, very simple and very, very easy to be taking this course. I guess the last thing I would say is that I really think that the look and feel of it is very, very natural in a lot of ways for people who spend any time on the internet. You can do it anytime you want, anywhere you want, as long as you have an online connection. So I did a little in my hotel last night. I've done it at airports, at work. You can really just do this anytime, anywhere. So it's really quite nice that way. And I think Udacity, I kind of felt was like an online learning library. And there's these 22 courses, and you can check them out when you want to. You can start them when you want to. You can end them when you want to. The class is a lot like that, too. It's kind of like a book. You can just pick it up wherever you want and just start reading a chapter or two. And like a bookmark, it automatically takes you right back to where you left the course, too. And the segments just kind of smoothly, seamlessly flow together. So it was really quite a great experience. And if you haven't taken a look at any of these MOOCs, I would encourage you to go out to some of those websites, some of those big platforms, and see what there is there. Because I found a class that was really, it's been very, very interesting. I haven't completed it yet. And as Kevin said, there aren't a lot of people who do complete these. I saw some statistics on a class at Duke that was offered last year on bioelectricity. There were about 13,000 people who started the course. Only about 7,000 looked at the first video. Only about 3,000 took the first quiz. And I think in the end there was about 300 people who completed the class and got a certificate. So I'm on my way to completing the class, and I want to get a certificate. So that's been my experience. It's been very, very good, very, very positive.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks. And let me just conclude, and I'm sure people will have interesting questions. And let me say I'd like to have Ray and Aaron and Jeff, and I don't know if Bob Poor is here today or not. jump in the discussion, but we'll get you all learning a little more about this, because right before I left, across my desk came an Association of Governing Boards of Colleges and Universities' new white paper entitled Massive Open Online Courses MOOCs, a primer for university and college board members. So Jane and I will get this out to you next week, and just let me read you one piece of it that I think is a good message for board members thinking about this topic. It says this, and this is written by the CIO at the Chief Information Officer at the University of Maryland, College Park for AGB. He says, indeed, boards should engage now with their presidents and other senior administrators on these matters. These engagements should be significant and supportive, and done with an understanding of the between a rock and a hard place position into which this revolution has placed institutional leaders, especially faculty members. Boards are certainly focused on institutional brand and prestige, revenue and market protection and enhancement, and cost containment and reduction. However, if these are viewed as the business reasons for adapting IT-enabled changes to the process of teaching and learning, resistance will be significant and trust will be slow in coming between the faculty and the board, with the presidents and administrators stuck in the middle. Boards should openly acknowledge and grapple with the cultural issues within their institutions and work actively and supportively with faculty members and administrators to address the challenges presented by this disruptive change. Amen. I think that's a good message, President Smith. So let's, well, why don't I just say, if any of my colleagues who know something about this want to jump in now before we get the questions and reactions from the board members, feel free.
Jeff, are you to talk about the relationship with Coursera? I'm interested in that.
Well, good morning. My name is Jeff Russell from University of Wisconsin-Madison, so you can think of me as Provost DeLuca with hair this morning. So, he's charged me, along with the Chancellor, in working on the whole relationship in terms of evaluating whether, in fact, we should consider MOOCs, as President Riley outlined. And when we looked at it, there was clearly an array of things to think about. We could do it ourselves. We did not really engage with Udacity. edX is engaged us now. And what we liked about Coursera was there was no transaction up front, so we had to make no commitment for any resources up front to be part of it. We retained the intellectual property. We had the ability after 90 days to pull out, and so if they were doing things from a business point of view, started running ads, started chasing our students, we wanted the provision to get out of it if it moved in a direction which we didn't have strong evidence to believe that it would, but we wanted the flexibility, particularly the faculty and staff, that if we needed to get out of this, we could get out of it. And I think that as we've gotten more into it, we've only committed to offer these 4 courses once, and they can't run the courses without the agreement. So there's a course agreement on the front end. You can't run the course without the approval of the instructor and the institution, in this case the provost. So these were the things that we looked at in terms of, realizing it's a private sector firm, realizing that, as President Riley said, we weren't looking at it from like the FOMA perspective. Our belief was we need to be engaged in this. We need to learn by doing. This is about teaching and learning. It's about understanding technology. It's about being in a cohort of 61 other institutions from around the world, where in fact today 6 of our team members are at the University of Penn with 400 people in a Coursera workshop where they're sharing ideas, talking about the learning management system, talking about course design. Many of these kind of things are important for us to be thinking on the campus around a pilot, around an experiment, and around the research of this. So that's probably a little bit more than you wanted, but I can answer any other questions that you might have as well. Good. Thank you.
Jerry.
Kevin, don't we need a strategy for the university as to where we might want to go, maybe utilizing the good offices of a broad and diverse conversation so we avoid catch-as-catch-can? That may well detract, or could conceivably detract to the commitment we've already made to the flex option plan. Got to do that, want to do that, need to get that scaled up. We're all reading about this stuff constantly, and it seems that we're trying to figure out how to go there. But don't we need a strategy?
I think the answer is yes. I think we've got one forming up kind of from the ground up based on some of the initiatives you've just heard about at this meeting. And I think, I know when Ray and Aaron talk about where we are at the flex option, they'll address a little bit about the MOOC relationship to that particular initiative. I've been pretty active, as a number of other colleagues have, in talking with Coursera recently, and the Coursera leadership is very interested in forming up agreements with systems, public university systems around the country. So I've invited the co-founder of Coursera, Daphne Kohler, to visit with the National Association of System Heads. We'll be having our meeting at the AGB meeting in San Francisco at the end of this month to talk a little bit about that effort. So we're kind of gathering intelligence from a number of different sides here to figure out what a larger strategy must be. Coursera, for their part, would like me to sign a document that they've given me saying we'll do X and Y. We're not quite ready. I've told Daphne to do that yet because we need to do a little more intelligence and due diligence on a number of these issues. But long-winded answer to your question, Regent Whitburn, I think we do need to do that, and I think it's forming up at in a pretty healthy way, at a pretty healthy pace. But there are so many unanswered questions in this business that you want, and this goes back to what Jeff was saying about the way Madison has struck the agreement with Coursera. I think you don't want to enter into a strategy now or a set of relationships that would be part of that strategy that would tie you in ways that could turn out to be detrimental in the near or far future.
I was wondering about it.
Aaron,
how do they get paid? We were thinking about asking Jeff that same question, but what is the financial arrangement, or they have financial arrangements with systems now, Kevin? Is that what
they're trying to start them.
Not to take all the airtime, but I think when we've looked at that, I mean, their model is, could they sell a certificate? So back to what was just said about, in terms of the math class here and that basic notion. So that's one. The other is that they've entered into, and many of you that are familiar with e-text, and I'm sure the chancellors and provosts are in the middle of that whole transformation around kind of the digital content of textbooks and how that's accessible. They're entering into agreements with Pearson, McGraw-Hill, and others, and there's some transaction that if you use part of a book or parts of the book, and the students then buy that book, then there is some means by which they're getting some remuneration from that. And then, of course, in the world of credentialing, the holy grail is to figure out how to convert it to credit, and that's why they're getting into these kind of discussions in terms of, that has some value towards the attainment of a given credential, whether it's actually a certificate or a degree. But that's the current model. They have $16 million of venture capital right now backing them. Their organization is about 50 people, and I think they're really engaged now to try to figure out what is the next step here. I think the other piece of this, too, deals with students can opt in. So the fourth piece would be the high-tech industries as we understand it. When students opt in, they can put their resume up on a listserv which certain companies have to pay in order to get access to. And so when you look at high talent and these kind of things, now the students this was something we spent a lot of time making sure they weren't going to force, if a student took one of our courses, force them into that situation. So a student has to opt in. So they're really using it as a human resource platform by which major companies can really sift through. So the point that Andy made, if you finish that course and you're in the top 300 and you did very well, you've got a certain level of competencies and skills that might be very attractive to a particular firm. So those are the four areas that I'm aware of that they're looking at. The credit piece has not fully been worked out, and I think that's why they're talking to System and many other folks to figure that out, because that looks like the big piece. But these other three are the current versions with the startup money that they've got from...
Are we paying, is UW-Madison paying them something for...
No. That's what I said on the front end. The reason why we went into this, there was no transactions, no money up front, period. In other words, what they were coming to us is they thought from a brand, from an array of courses that we could offer, that we could add and supplement to their portfolio. It's probably north of 300 courses existing that they have, and with now 61 or the total of 62 institutions, each group's probably going to do 3 to 4, maybe more. They're trying to build that portfolio of total courses and the range of offerings.
What's the cost of UW-Madison to put these 4 classes together?
Well, I think, and we've been asked that repeatedly. What I can tell you is that we don't know. And when I say we don't know, the big issue here is that we're not asking. So the big point here for us is we are not taking and putting a camera in the back of the room and capturing what we've historically done. Each of these 4 courses are actually, from a design perspective, we're thinking about it in a much more creative way to think of the audience beyond just a credit-bearing offering. And in fact, some of these may never be a fully credit-bearing supplement to a course. Maybe parts of them will be. So we have the faculty time, which we've committed $30,000 each one to help hire TAs and other support structure in to buy some of their time. And then we've got all the back systems and the academic technology, the design. I mean, when you look at the video game course and many of these others, we're really trying to think about creative design to present content, and then we have to think very carefully. You can't teach, as I'm sure our colleague here will tell us, you can't answer 20,000 emails every day in the massive and the open. So you've got to think very carefully about how you're going to do the assessment. What do you want students to know and to be able to do? And that's one of the reasons we wanted to be in the space. We want to be looking at the digital, automated, state-of-the-art ideas on how to give more routine or better, more timely feedback to students as they work through course material. And that's just a fundamental principle of good teaching and learning, is to give good feedback, in addition to the peer-to-peer evaluation that's going on because of the crowdsourcing notion that are embedded in these courses.
Aaron, Ed.
Just a quick 2 comments. One is that right now there's a lot of altruism in this MOOC world, but don't kid yourself into thinking that's going to last, right? So it's a very competitive venture, and Kevin and I have talked about how Coursera has become pretty aggressive in the pursuit of systems to sign on. So that's one point. Second point is, as Jeff was saying, right now the MOOCs, if you think about them as the textbooks, they're providing good content packaged in good ways. It is really very compelling. To convert that to credits, or in our case, into competencies, is really where the business model leads. How do you assure that students are learning something from these courses, and then therefore how do you credit that? That's the point at which it'll be competitive with Flex, because that's exactly what we're doing. So our position in terms of Flex is MOOCs are great, everyone else should do them. What we want to do is take advantage of them. And I don't mean that quite as glib as it sounds, but in truth, the more good quality content that's out there, the better, so that students who go through Flex really can take advantage of all these things. But it is the conversion of that to how do we demonstrate learning and all the rest of it. That's really what Flex is about, and to the extent that MOOCs begin to move into that world is where the competition will be.
Chuck?
Thanks. I guess my question is really related to sort of alignment. I mean, for the FOMO reason or any other reason, I think MOOCs certainly are an interesting thing to be exploring, and the only risk I see is if you become obsessed with it, they become a bit of a distraction in terms of the shiny new toy that is going to answer all things. And I guess the question I was wondering is, what's the conversation amongst these folks in terms of dealing with what at least I think is probably the central challenge we face in higher education, is how do you reach first-generation students, lower and moderate income students who seem to be the least likely candidates to both engage in and complete a MOOC, and also the folks who most need the sort of the direct one-on-one attention that comes from being part of a more traditional higher education environment. I'm wondering, is there conversation going on in MOOC land about these kinds of questions, or are they so focused on continuing education and the Andy Richards of this world, who I'm not so worried about going forward? Just curious. We are. Andy is, but, you know.
Well, I can say something about that, and I think others should address it, but you'll notice one of the courses that Jeff and his colleagues at Madison are putting up, this one in the fall, is one called More Than Just a High Score, Video Games and Learning. And as I look at this, part of the promise of it is if we can do the packaging in a way that recognizes what we've learned about why kids, all kids, poor kids, rich kids, white kids, black kids, Native American kids, want to play video games. What pulls them in? What is so compelling about getting to that next level that's more important than eating or paying attention to your parents or taking your little brother's hand off the hot fire that he's putting it into on the stove? You know, you see these kids playing these games, and there is that level of drawing in. If we can use what we've learned about that into the packaging of these things, I think we have a chance of using them to make a dent into some of those populations that are not going to go online and immediately jump onto the entrepreneurship course that Andy's taking. But again, let me ask colleagues.
I'll ask Bob, because that is because I think what Chuck is saying is that's the criticism I read, or at least the questions that are raised in the Chronicle and others about who this is aimed at, who it's going to impact the most. That seems to be an ongoing debate. Bob?
Yeah, Bob Hoare from La Crosse with the Math MOOC. I think there's not a definition of MOOCs that can really be in place yet. That's very specific. That would answer your questions. I think it's going to vary by course. I think it's going to vary by those putting on the course. Who are they targeting and what are their intentions? Our particular one is trying to broaden access. It's not going to broaden it to everybody. You have to have internet access and you have to have time. But one of the things it does do is allow you to use your time the way you want it and when you want it. It's not structured like a course at the university where you have to be up there on a certain day at a certain time. So it does broaden that, and we do have first generation people who are fully employed trying to get ready for college to get back in. And this is a means by which they can attain that for no cost. So it is broadening that. The sheer numbers that are interested in this, I think, as I said yesterday, is inspiring. People do want access to higher education, and they haven't found it yet. You know, there are those that have left the university or left high school without touching the university, and they're looking for a pathway back, and this is one. I don't think it'll replace it. You know, in terms of those individuals that need a lot of time in the structured course, I don't think the math MOOC will replace all remedial math, but I think it could actually improve it. One of the problems we're seeing is that with the increasing number of individuals needing remedial math, those course sizes, those section sizes are growing, which isn't to the benefit of those that need more of that one-on-one help. But this helps get those that don't need that one-on-one out of the way so that we can do more of the one-on-one. So I think it's going to be part of a toolkit. It's not going to replace every tool in there. It's going to be one of those tools that will help make those other tools more effective.
That's a Crossman.
If you didn't hear that, he said, am I Aaron without hair? This is from my friend. I think there's a really important point here. I believe that most of the MOOCs today are designed to serve professional levels or folks that are inclined or motivated to do that. One of the strategies that I've observed from the University of Southern New Hampshire, which I think is really interesting, Paul LeBlanc, a friend, his goal is to go into corporations and focusing on large convenience store corporations like Stop and Go that employ a lot of folks that are transient or part-time. And he has done this with a couple of companies. And he believes that he can reach them because of their employer and provide a lot of very fundamental education to help elevate the education of that level of workforce. If you think about that, I believe what we're seeing is the evolution from serving a very professional group of people, and as this becomes much more effective, and the things we learn, as Jeff was alluding to, from this process, can we apply that to those who don't know or see themselves as participating at this level? And so we're in the very early stages of it. But if we aren't there in a few years, shame on us.
Jim Jorstad from UW-La wanted to say something.
I'm the man behind the curtain usually. And in some regard, Bob is too. Faculty are really involved with the research, and they don't always have time to tell their story. And sometimes a trick for each campus is to find those faculty who are teaching those incredible courses that we want to consider to MOOC. And so Bob's in the background doing his research, and so I'm saying, Bob, you've got to get your name out there. You have to market your story and actually use social media. So what we do when Bob does his MOOC, we kind of track, we'll place a story purposefully, and we track it socially on media about, when we do a story about them, we track in the world where that spike is. And so we have a timeline of exactly when something comes out, we know precisely where it goes, and actually we have 80 countries following what we write about Bob's MOOC. So I encourage some of the smaller campuses that, how do you get into the big leagues? How do you get the word out to explain what a MOOC is, what great programs each of your campuses have? And the trick is to find great faculty, but marry them with an agent, either a social media agent or a marketing agent on your campus to tell their story, because, guess what? They don't have time to do both because they're very busy. And so you have to look at each of your campuses, who's going to be the advocate for each of these faculty members. And it's been incredible. Right now we have 20,000 people viewing just what Bob is doing. And so that kind of propagates. We talk about how to reach audiences. Well, who does a lot of that social media? 18 to 24. So they're tweeting, they're looking at, so it's a great marketing technique. And the best thing is, what is the cost to do that? It is zero. All it does is take your time and a great message. So I think that's a key point to kind of think about when you develop these MOOCs at each of your campuses.
Thanks, Jim. Mike Bellow.
We appear to be going down two lines, academic versus financial, and it's really interesting. And I think those lines cross when the academic piece, when it becomes worth credit, that it has then a financial, the financial influence comes into play. Now, places like Coursera, if they're being funded with $16 million of venture capital, they have a roadmap to being financially successful that I think we ought to find out what that is and see if and part of their financial success might come at our expense. But I guarantee you that a venture capital firm did not invest in this without the idea of having a return on their dollars. And I think it would be important for our people to maybe work with these places. I don't think it would be a big secret or difficult to find out what their road to financial success is and plug that into a much more intricate process that we have on the academic side.
Following up on what Mike is saying, do any of the MOOCs yet, are those courses being offered for credit anywhere at this point in time? Not ours, but I mean any higher education institution?
So San Jose State has signed an agreement with Udacity to offer developmental level MOOCs for credit. And they're kind of in the middle of that experiment right now. And in a sense, it makes sense, thinking about it from an institution's side, developing courses like the developmental math course and with the explicit, to make it explicit for credit bearing for their students. So in that sense, that's one place that's working on that.
And Brent, the American Council on Education has a contract with a couple of these companies to review the courses for credit recommendations. They've looked at 5 or 6 now, I think, and have established credit recommendations. The idea of those recommendations is that the student could take those and say, the American Council on Education has recommended this for 3 credits in computer science. Will you accept it, UW-La Crosse? And let me go on to the next higher level course. And ACE has a long history of doing that since World War II in a massive way, and so that holds some promise in this regard. I want to go back to Regent Falbo's comment too. It's fascinating, as you can imagine, to talk to people like the founders of Coursera, Udacity, and try to figure out what the answer to the question you're raising is. What struck me, and again others can comment on this, is how fluid the upfront part of this business plan is, because the deal that Coursera struck with Madison is very different from the deal they have struck with some other universities. And there's an adaptability on the part of the companies now, I think, to get major universities into the family. So, because there are brand implications of that for them, obviously, and for eventually whether there's a return on investment for those venture capitalists. So that's part of what's so fascinating about this. Chancellor Gao? Yeah.
You always got to be in front of the camera.
That's right.
No, audio, though. That's
I had the privilege of seeing Kevin's presentation in Washington at ACE, and I really was impressed with, as I know you are too, there's just so much momentum on this that it will happen. The strategic question that I find more interesting as far as maybe who's doing the courses is what are we going to do? You just said it, and you said it kind of casually, but when students come to us and say, I took this course, and it's been certified by ACE, and there'll be some way to do assessment that people will say, it's an old-fashioned kind of problem. Did you take the test and pass it? And somebody's going to figure that out, how to do that securely. Are we going to take the credit? And how much credit? Because you would be essentially, to some extent we have that with advanced placement right now, but it isn't, kind of a massive movement. But that's where I see this all headed, and that's probably the most strategic, interesting question of all. How are we going to treat these credits? And I don't have an answer for you on that. So,
thanks, Joe.
I keep coming back to Kevin's comment about the video games, and I think about Andy's comments in the entrepreneurial course. And it's my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, that a lot of the MOOCs are like an electronic textbook where it's very linear in terms of what you do. You can step in and step out, but when I think about the video games that you're describing, where I can define my own avatar and I can give myself characteristics and attitude, and as I go through this scenario, it's not linear. It's, well, okay, I went there and I got killed, and now I come back and I start over again, and I go this way and I survive, and so I'm now in this entrepreneurial MOOC that is a combination of a video game and not a linear, but a video game with pathways that talks about entrepreneurism. And I can't help imagining that the people that are going to get this figured out are the people that are going to be able to charge because it's compelling, and because you can earn that credential by going through this trial and error and success and creativity and I think we think the financial model is in the credentialing, and I don't disagree with that. I think a lot of folks agree with that, but I'm not sure that there's not a financial model in the creative delivery of this that gets that compelling, how do you get your 10-year-old interested in this trial and error method to achieving stellar success in mathematics? And I got to believe people more creative than me could figure that out. But am I way off base here, or is this?
Not at all. I think you're right on base, and I have two reactions. One is what this could allow us to do in a way that would be very useful is to redefine the notion of failure. you took this course and you didn't master enough of it, you got an F. Well, here, you take one segment and you figure out on the assessment, you didn't get quite to where you need to be, and so the next week you go back and do that section of it again, that module, and by the end of the second week, you're through that. So you haven't flunked out. You've just redone what you needed to redo, and somebody else may need to redo another section in that way, and you'll breeze through that third section when you get to that. And how can we make it compelling enough so that when that student doesn't do well the first time, they're still engaged to go back and try to get to that next level? And the video game people have figured that out. That's part of the compellingness of their product. So I think you're exactly right, Mark. And you and I can really get the answer to this question because we can take the video games, Jeff, right? Yep. We can take the video games and learning MOOC this fall, and we'll probably know the answer to your question. I'm intending to do that. I'm serious.
And you'll get a certificate.
And I might get a certificate if I stick with it.
Yeah,
what's that?
On your lunch
On my lunch hour. Correct. Right. Regent Wells, or Chancellor Wells.
You keep calling it that. But it's not.
Yeah, I don't like to pay. It's really quite exciting and scary at the same time. And as listening to all this, you kind of envisioning, always in my opinion, your overall education is greater than the sum of its parts. So all these different parts are coming in, and if we envision, this may not be a very good metaphor, but if we envision what we do as providing this outstanding vehicle to your future, and you bring things to this vehicle that will help make sense as you move forward to your future, that's kind of our value addedness, I think. I also think that the more we can help people that hopefully are still our students in the future demonstrate not just what they know, but what they can do with what they know. So the knowledge that you get in any course or any educational experience is just the first step to being able to do something with it. And I'm not sure MOOCs are going to be, or even our own traditional courses, really are designed to help you not just only master the subject matter or master the essential learning outcomes, but designed that you can do something with it. Show me what you can do with it. So I think part of the educational environment we have to create is a demonstration of your ability to use what you know in effective, purposeful ways. So I think that's how we have to start thinking about some of this.
Anybody else? Thank you for that. Do you have any final comments you'd have? No. Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take 10 minutes, and then, but come back, please, if we're going to have an update on the flex option at 10:25. So we could be back here promptly at 10:25. Yeah.
So you get the knowledge by working on your computer, however you do it.
All right, well, we've already talked a little bit about flex option this morning, but I think we'll call on Chancellor Crosse and Vice Chancellor Brower to provide an update on flex option. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to answer all of your questions, so I probably should sit down now, but there are a lot of questions that cannot be answered at this point, so we'll try to give you an update and engage you in a little bit of conversation about this, but show you where we are. One of the things that I want to stress as we begin this is that this is a complex issue. In some ways, it's like creating a whole new virtual university within an existing university that has long-standing processes and systems in place. We're working with a completely new currency, if you will, a new exchange tool, competencies as opposed to credits. Changes so many things, as you might imagine. Well, this whole effort has captured a lot of national attention, from the Wall Street Journal to all kinds of state papers to the Chronicle of Higher Ed to Inside Higher Ed. But there are other things that have captured my attention within this. I received a call not too long ago from the Senate Majority Leader's Chief of Staff in Florida, and he talked to me for a couple of hours about, how are you doing this? How can you make this happen? We want to do something like this. The same is true with Kentucky. I received a call from those folks. I was asked to speak in California and shared the stage with Daphne and Sebastian Thrun from Udacity and talked to them considerably about how this might fit and complement the efforts of these free, massively open online courses. So we have received a lot of national attention for the effort that we're putting forward to go to a competency-based model. Aaron's going to speak about it a little bit, but the Department of Education is also trying to find a way so that we're eligible for Title IV financial aid funding in a manner that allows us to compete with traditional models. For instance, in a competency-based model, what constitutes a full-time or half-time student? How do you determine that in a self-paced, competency-based model? Well, just a brief overview. I don't expect you to be able to read this. I merely want you to understand there is a timeline we're working with. It's in much greater detail than this, but it gives you a sense of these important milestones. And we're making progress toward our fall startup date. Now, fall is a 3-month period, or thereabouts. It ends on winter solstice, so keep in mind that it doesn't have a single starting date. Neither do these programs. They're self-paced, and we want people to move in and out of them quickly. I think you heard Andy talk about the ease of which he was able to engage that curriculum, and that's the kind of thing we're working on. I'll shift to my partner with hair, Aaron.
I just want to point out on this timeline, which is, as Ray said, the overview, that we have now initiated conversations with HLC, which is our accrediting body. We're now part of what they're considering a pilot group. Who gets accredited are actually the institutions. So it's Milwaukee and colleges who are part of this pilot group for what they're calling direct assessment accreditation. And as Ray is saying, there's lots of language in the current structures that are really aimed at the credit world, and so converting some of that language, converting some of the accreditation processes to a competency-based or direct assessment is part of this pilot. So we've had those conversations. We will submit our initial set of forms in May 15th to be reviewed by HLC in early July, and then we'll get a decision back from them in mid-July. The decision will allow us to, assuming we're accredited, that's when we can begin to officially market the programs. So just so you understand, that's one sequence that's in place. The way the Department of Ed is, as Ray is saying, with Title IV financial aid, they require programs to first go through their accrediting bodies. So Ray and I were in Washington 2 weeks ago and talked to Department of Ed people, and so we'll be kind of unofficially working with them through this period, but it won't be until the accreditation from HLC that we can actually begin to work officially on the Title IV aid issue. So again, just so you're understanding the sequence there.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Does HLC give you just an up or down decision, or do they say this part of it is deficient, or can you make modifications based upon the response from HLC?
Yeah. Yes, they do. On even the normal accreditation, you get accredited for parts and you get feedback on other parts. In this case, it's a little, all of us on uncharted territory, so we're getting early signals that they like our model. In other words, different from Western governors, different from Northern Arizona, different from even the new, you may have heard about California legislation trying to develop something new. We're building off of existing accredited degree programs and existing accredited institutions. So there's a little bit of an on-ramp there that will be to our advantage. So we're expecting, I mean, we have to work at this. They're going to make us jump through all the right hoops. But we expect that it will go well. The timing will be what it is, though, so that's out of our control. This is just to say, you've seen a different version of this picture before. There really are 4 different interlocking pieces that are in the works right now. We've got a communications plan that we're developing. I'll give you a little bit more information about each of these 4, actually. A communications plan, different messages for different stakeholder groups over different times. Our business model, how does this get funded? How do we remunerate the effort that goes in, both for development and the implementation of the program? What are all the academic activities, the development of the competencies and assessments, and all of the back office stuff? How does registration work? How does admissions work? How does financial aid work? What does the student information system look like? That sort of thing. I think it's still me, right? Yeah, okay, still me. So with our communications plan, we're focusing at the moment on 4 specific areas. Each of these represent categories of even more detailed projects. So there's a web presence, and we realize there's actually 2 different sets of web presences that we need. One is for marketing this to students. Who's going to enroll, and what would the web look like for that? And the other is there's really intense interest in the program. So when people call us continually and say, tell us about the program, we would love to send them to a web and say, here's a bunch of materials and here's what the program is, and then let's talk after that. And if you can imagine someone Googling UW-Flex, this is getting a little into the weeds, but what will they find? If a student's looking for the enrollment website, will they find all these details that are really aimed more at our colleagues, and vice versa? So figuring that out is part of our challenge. Again, marketing is going to be a big strategy. Our federal strategy, again, there's a lot of discussion and communication we've got now. And then we have a lot of other stakeholders. You're not meant to actually, well, you can sort of read that. We were trying to make it not so readable, but what this is really trying to illustrate is, again, as Ray is suggesting, we're standing up a kind of at the level of effort, almost like standing up an entire new university. I want to reassure people we're not standing up an entire new university. These are programs that are going through existing institutions. But just this is a little screenshot of the project plan related to just messaging. And there are 28 different kinds of messages, and we've identified 34 stakeholder groups, and you get the little inset on the, how this is laying out.
Switching to the business model, one of the other four legs of that rather ugly stool we had up there, a couple of observations about this. This is a cost recovery program. This will be a sustainable program on the revenues we capture from the program in the future. It will require some startup costs, and that's what we're going through at this point. We refer to that as investments, like a startup investment. One of the things that has captured the attention of some potential grants, Lumina, others, is the fact that this is a shared investment model between the state, the system, extension, and truly the campuses as well who are participating in this. So that shared investment model has some attractiveness. I'll come back to the cost recovery thing at the end, and I just wanted to mention that. You will be receiving probably, well, I'm actually quite certain you will be receiving a more detailed request and information regarding the pricing. How will we price this? At the July board meeting, you will be receiving some information about what are the terms, how does this fit? When I say terms of the length of engagement. What I want to say is that we're pretty close on that, but we're not finally there. We don't have the final numbers. We're still working things out, but it's coming together nicely. And part of this will look differently than it does for the campuses because this is not a credit-based kind of model. How will it fit? It's going to look more like the private sector competitors that we will be competing with, and that's an important part. But it'll be sufficiently capable of providing students who are able to take advantage of MOOCs or other free instructional information or self-learning that is compatible with the identified competencies that we're attempting to measure, what they know, what they can do, and how well they know it or how well they can do it at a mastery level. So in that process, it's possible for them to greatly reduce their cost because they're not having to pay for that portion of instruction. The reason I wanted to mention the cost recovery model because this is a sustainable model once it's up and running. And we are anticipating this kind of a projected enrollment. Remember, enrollment, since this is a cost recovery model, enrollment represents the revenue stream that we will achieve. So if you look over here, the reason we have this over a startup year, which we're in now, and 2 biennia following this, the reason for that is because, I guess there it is, over here in 17, we are anticipating that's roughly our break-even point. So if this is our revenue stream, this is what our break-even point is based on these very conservative enrollment projections. Now, the top line you see there is the accumulation of all the program program enrollment numbers that we're looking at. So it's the top line. In a normal business plan, you would present a best case scenario, a base case, and a worst case scenario. So you have some sort of sense of where those three are. This is pretty close to a worst case scenario. This is very conservative in terms of the number of student enrollment, numbers of students to be enrolled that we're looking at. In addition to that, this is only the full-time student numbers. only the full-time. We don't have any revenues projected in here for part-time students. Now think about that for a minute. We think that's going to be a sizable number as well.
One quick thing back here. We're happy to talk more about this, but again, as you're seeing this trend line, so roughly 1,400 students represents total enrollment across 10 projected programs, right? So 140 per program, full-time students, which is why we're talking about this as a very conservative number. If we're not enrolling 140 students in each of those 10 programs, then we've either picked the wrong programs or we're doing something really wrong. Okay, there's a lot of academic activity taking place at Milwaukeean colleges. All the issues we've talked about in the past are still the front and center ones, the quality of the program, how do we ensure curriculum integrity, how do we really know when students are learning the things that we want them to be learning, what are the full range of things that we are wanting students to know in each of these programs. And so those are all the issues that we're addressing. We've had several campus workshops. We meet regularly in different groups. I have to say this is a really fun part for me as an educator, talking with my colleagues about these basic issues of what do we want students to learn and how are we going to know. It's just a really fun thing. The expectation is that we'll have the competencies written for these Cohort 1 programs by May, and then a portion of the assessments written by the fall enrollment. And as you know, the assessments are really what students are kind of signing up to take. And so we're focusing, or we will be focusing on that portion of assessments that we think will be the ones that students need to take early in order to advance in these programs. And the reason we're focusing on a portion instead of all of them is that just capacity-wise, it's going to take us probably the full academic year to develop all the assessments needed. This is a little bit of a snapshot of some of the competencies written for the Bachelor of Information Science and Technology. So you can see there's introductory competencies, mid-level competencies, upper-level competencies, and they're the kinds of things you would expect from graduates of this kind of a degree. Early stage one, to understand and be able to relate concepts of information science and information studies, all the way down to apply systems analysis techniques to a realistic project, from preliminary requirements analysis through the prototype system. So again, just to give you a sense of how these competencies look.
Within the operational side of this, and the term we're using, the academic side and the operational side, mostly would apply to what we would call the backroom side. Admissions, enrollment, bursar function, financial aid advising, information technology. These, when we started this, I thought this would be the easiest portion and that the academic side would be the most difficult. We're discovering that this is difficult and challenging. And how do we do this? In part because it's a competency-based model, but also because how do we facilitate that with the campuses so we're functioning effectively? Financial aid is awarded to the campus, not to an extension entity. It's the campus that has that. It's the institution that has that. How do we work together to achieve efficiency without further exacerbating their workload and making it more difficult? I'll focus a little bit on the information technology issue in a moment, but to give you an idea, breaking this down into these three major areas, academic operations and some extension functions, what we're attempting to do is determine, this is such a high-level project management chart that I hesitate to show it, but I merely want to show you that we have some form of a scheme that allows you to see that these functions are being worked on or being developed in a way that should help us get this completed by certain dates. And I'll down at the bottom here, the IT area is one of serious concern that we're trying to work on. So I want to pull that out and let you know that there's a whole lot more detail to this than to each of these than you see on that other sheet. What you're looking at here is a CPM type chart. I got to get this done before that's done. I need a decision here before that moves. Those kinds of PERT or Gantt charts that you would see in a project management. This is a piece of the IT portion of that, which is incredibly complicated and quite frankly frustrating. There are some days that I would like to call some of my New York friends and deal with the PeopleSoft organization in a little bit of an aggressive fashion, but we won't go there. So, this is a complicated process, in part because you have to be able to translate competencies into credits, because you have to transfer students out and you have to transfer students in. So you have to be able to have an exchange rate and model that works, and a student information system that seamlessly moves that information between campuses and elsewhere. It's rather frustrating, but that's the world we're in.
We've actually talked about this a bit. It just, again, a little more detail on the accreditation timeline. But we've talked about this, so I actually think I'll skip over. This is our last slide, and then we hope to have discussion. What we want to kind of represent here is that the quality student experience, quality educational experience is really at the center of this, and there are, categories here and how we're dealing with it. Increased access to quality education is really the primary goal, and we're proceeding along the basic model of having flexibilities which lead to affordability, but remaining really drawing on the quality institutional resources, people and curricular resources that we have already. We really need to increase retention and degree completion. And so this third element we've talked about in a previous update to you all is having to do with this wraparound, proactive, very strong advising model. Bob Hoare's experiences with their developmental math courses is making this point even stronger. The role of those tutors to help students when they get stuck. This has to be valuable to the degrees that what students learn has to be valuable to employers, and this should have been labeled employers and future graduate schools or professional schools. But the students who graduate with these degrees, we want that to go somewhere, and it really has to do with the quality of those competencies and the quality of the assessments, the faith that we have that those assessments really are capturing what it is we want them to capture. The stackable certificates is another question we have talked about at various points, but we want to make this, put this in front of you again. The potential for flex is to think about a BA in a different way. Right now, you kind of get the BA or you don't get the BA or BS. And in this flexible degree model, you could have credentials that have value in and of themselves that then stack together to form a bachelor's. So we have, as you know, the professional communications certificate. That'll be a very valuable certificate in and of itself. Within that certificate actually will be professional writing and professional oral communication. And it may be that a student really is looking for professional written expertise and more experience, and a corporation that they're working in is interested in that. And that may be what they're after, and they pursue that and get it, and they complete that, and then they're really happy. And this provides an opportunity to provide some credentialing in a kind of sub-baccalaureate way that we think has real potential. And then all of this is predicated on the recognition that higher education landscape is really rapidly changing all around us. And so our new business model and shared investment strategy are part of what we're building into this so that it takes us forward. And Ray will close us out with more on that.
A couple of points. There are serious challenges to doing this. One is academic. Rick alluded to it earlier. A degree is not merely stacking competencies. It's like putting bricks up without mortar. You could stack these competencies, good things, nobody disputes that. How do you tie it together so it's a meaningful experience? You need mortar, something that connects these. And we're working on that, and that's one of the pieces that I think will separate us from our competitors, but that's not easy. Secondly, in higher education, it's difficult. It's difficult to try things and take risks and back up, start over. Okay, we've got to change that a little bit. We're out in new territory, and we need your patience, we need your help, encouragement, and we also need your criticism. We have to change, modify. We often, in our world, have to plan things so carefully out for 5 years. Well, you can't do that. This is a new field. And one of the reasons I say that is because in a public higher education arena, we aren't given the opportunity to take risks very often. And so we're going to need your support as we try to do this. And then thirdly, this could not happen without some tremendous people who, from Aaron to David Scable to a lot of others, but just as importantly, the UW faculty at Milwaukee that have been working on this, and Laura, and Mike's not here, but they have really been doing a wonderful job. The colleges folks that have been putting this together, trying to get those first 2 years. We even have, and Mark Peterson's here, we even have the philosophy faculty trying to figure out how to put a philosophy curriculum or at least courses into this model. Go figure, but that's the way philosophers are, right? It's amazing. So from my perspective, there are some wonderful people. And then the members of the advisory committees, faculty, administrative, and the operational folks have been very, very helpful, trying to help us think this through so we don't make at least more mistakes than we normally would. We appreciate it very much. Finally, if you'd have told me a year ago this is where we'd be today, I'd have said, that's pretty amazing. I don't believe it. So I'm really surprised. We're doing well, and we're going to get there one way or another. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions or comments for Regent Rybar?
First of all, I'd like to thank you. This is very exciting. I didn't expect it to come so far myself. As I said before, and I'd like to do this from a Regents perspective, that I feel very strongly that the adult learners in this state need two things: safe and affordable place to get the education they need to feed their families, stay competitive. Now, as far as I see it, the first part, safe, you're doing that with the UW system behind it and with the faculty. What I'd like some assurance on is the affordable part. It would seem to me that as we get more students, and I'm an optimistic person, I think your numbers are conservative, that the marginal cost of providing these services would get lower. Do I have a commitment, or what are your thoughts on keeping this as affordable as possible for the students that are participating in it? And that would be what I'd like you to comment on. Thank you.
I'll try. I think we're trying to create multiple ways for this to be cost-effective for all students. One is the MOOC. You're able to take advantage of free courses. Secondly, I think it's important to remember that your perception about, hey, in a few years, if this is scalable, and that's another question, can we scale this? Then our margins should be more attractive, and can we keep reducing it so it's accessible by your definition affordability? And I think those go together tightly. And it also speaks to Regent Pruitt's comment earlier. if we can do that correctly while providing 360 wraparound intrusive advising for those students who normally wouldn't access higher education, either because of cost, intimidation, or other factors, then we will truly operate like a public university. And I think that should be our goal. So you have my personal commitment that that's the direction we're headed. There are a lot of factors that may influence that, but that's how I feel.
Could I just jump in there, Ray and Aaron? Did you want to address that issue too?
Just
go
a
ahead.
quick anecdote about another part of this, that's the cost effectiveness, and actually just to reassure you that you have my commitment in terms of cost, trying to keep costs front and center in this project as well. So I signed up for the business math, we were talking about this yesterday. I signed up for the business math and personal finance certificate pilot just so I could try it as well. And I'm thinking that my experience is probably very typical for students. In other words, I flew through the first parts of these, the first sets of modules. I mean, in a weekend, finished 2 out of the 5 modules. And thank God, because it was like developmental math, and I should turn in my PhD if I couldn't have done some of the things that I was asked to do, although, okay, I won't go there. But then you hit the wall, and then you start kind of working in a more measured way through these modules. So it's the pace of this that really will make a huge difference. If these were semester by semester courses, this would have been 5 semesters worth of work, and I would be in week 4 of the first semester bored out of my mind and paying a tuition on that course. I literally finished 2 of these in a weekend, and then I've kind of got stuck. And so I think that piece of it in and of itself will make a huge difference with affordability. Now that puts a lot of responsibility on what the student brings into it. So it may be that students will go at a slow pace or a fast pace, but I think that the self-paced nature really makes a huge difference.
Just building on what Aaron just had to say, Regent Rybar, this is new enough that we have to flip the paradigm in the way we think about tuition or cost, because if you think of the usual 2 questions, well, what's the tuition, meaning what do you pay a semester, and what's the cost of earning a degree? Those are 2 big cost questions. And we won't have traditional semesters, and what students pay long-term for the degree will depend on what they bring and can get recognized for doing. So they won't have to sit through those courses where they already have the competency and pay for those. So it's easy to answer that question in our old paradigm. Any one of the chancellors behind you can tell you exactly what the per semester or per year tuition is at their institution. Here, it's really going to be so student-based that the tuition will be different to get that degree for almost every student who gets it in this mode. It's just a new way of thinking about all that. Tyler.
Ray, I've got a question. I think of this as being a very entrepreneurial thing that you're doing, and when I think of, makes me recall a discussion I had with a corporate responsibility person whose end of the spectrum on risk was, I have to be 110% sure this is right before I take a step, and I said, well, 50-50 is good enough for me. If I'm wrong, I'll adjust. And I'm thinking of that tension with you. I mean, as a public institution, there's probably that tendency toward the 110%, and as an entrepreneur, can you address, how you're dealing with that tension, and where do you end up on that scale?
I don't know. I think if I look at my colleagues over here, all of us are concerned about harming our existing campuses. Is this pulling resources from our campuses? Will this complement those folks? We have, I think Kevin and I have said this, a lot of the others, between 750,000 and 1 million adults in Wisconsin with some college without a degree. How do we reach them in an effective way, in a cost-effective way? in a way that allows them to digest this. You heard Andy talk about, he goes in for 2 minutes and boom, he has time to do this and he can knock some of these things off. We're trying to make this, I'll use this word because it's an ag term, we're trying to make this consumable and digestible in palatable pieces that allows the learner to purchase it or acquire it as they need it. Now, the reason I'm saying that is that I think Wisconsin is at the forefront of this. We will be the second institution recognized by the Department of Education, the first being the University of Southern New Hampshire, a private institution. And we need to be struggling and grappling with this and yet moving forward at the same time. And I think what I'm saying is that I'm comfortable making mistakes. I think it's important that we do them in the open, and we're not trying to be, we're trying to be as transparent as we can. This is where we're going. This is why we're going. What do you think about it? And Kevin has been, I don't know, this is the courageous part. In fact, just this last weekend, the UP CEA meeting in Boston, the continuing ed meeting, Anya, I forget her last name, she wrote the book DIY University, DIYU, and I spoke with her at some thing here a while back on the Madison campus. She was very complimentary about this flex degree in that forum when she was a keynote speaker, and she said, boy, Wisconsin is very brave and courageous. Really? I kind of was taken back by that. But I think that's where we are, Mark. We're stepping out, and I just want to make sure we're not afraid to step out, but we're also cautious. And that's what my colleagues are, and the faculty are concerned about as well.
Regent Milner.
To follow up on what you've just said, one of the things you've asked from us has been our support and patience and support both for what you're doing and support with other parts of our state to allow you to deal with the issues you have to deal with. And I just want to comment. I just want to tell you that what you've presented with us with today has really provided me with a great deal of confidence in providing you with that kind of support. You've accomplished this in less than 1 short year, and you've not only accomplished facing a range of issues, but you've done it in a thoughtful way that looks at a variety of issues that need to be taken care of in advance of doing it. So thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Regent Whitburn.
I share Regina's congratulations to you in the work today. But, Ray, on the subject of scale, we have promised. We promised the state that we would ramp this up, change in this paradigm shift, and taken the early national recognition that's come with this innovative thought process. But now we got to do it.
Chancellor Wells.
Question embedded there, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to comment on that, right? Yeah, go ahead.
The question of scale has a lot to do with number of students you can serve. I think you heard Jeff say, you have 20,000 students enrolled in a MOOC. How do you evaluate and deal with that? And those are the challenges we're talking about, either as a faculty member or a tutor, or if you think about this, in some ways we're going back to the old Oxford-Cambridge model, where the faculty member is alongside and is the tutor in this process. So you really have a lot of self-directed learning. We don't believe that serves all these students well. We have to be intrusive in that process. So the scaling, I think we're charting new territory in order to deliver it in a quality way, and that's our challenge. So I can't tell you, yes, we're committed to doing that, but it's also an important piece. We don't know exactly where that's leading.
Let me add a little bit to the scalability question. Is in our business model, there are ratios of, as Ray is suggesting, there's capacity issues that we have to deal with. So just capacity of admissions, how to manage 200 students versus 20,000 students. That overwhelms the capacity of the admissions process unless we also adequately ramp up through the ratios that we have between admissions advisors and counselors and admissions officers and numbers of students who are enrolling. So our scaling is trying to build the operations in concert with enrollment. Our business model has ratios in it. Advisor 1 is 85:1, for example, on this intrusive advising. What that means on our chart where we are showing enrollments, if enrollments raise faster, the business model allows for the hiring of more people in order to meet that enrollment. So we're building in the scalability. We just don't want to overpromise that we will have 10,000 students within a 4-year period, because if we don't hit that mark, then we've sort of built the structure before we've got the content, the enrollment. So it's there, and that line can move up. We just want to plan for it to be as conservative as possible so that we can tell you next year, look how much better we did than promised, rather than, uh-oh, we're not hitting our mark, and therefore we're going to need more investment from you.
Yeah, I have confidence, that the scale is going to be met, and I just want to reinforce at least a couple things. I think it's important to make sure that happens. One is keeping the support of the Regents with regard to the need to fail fast, learn from that, and keep moving. And also for the other stakeholder groups, the faculty, the chancellors, and others, to also allow Ray and Aaron to fail fast and not throw them under the bus, because there's still critics out there, both internal and external, on this. But I think you're starting to see more and more people come behind this. So I think that's a very important thing. Fail in the open, fail quickly, show what you learn from that, and keep moving. And as long as the quality thing, in terms of particularly, but I think both internal and external stakeholders drives this as you're doing, I think that's going to help. I think it's especially important to the faculty on the general education piece of the degree program. You showed an example of the essential learning outcomes / rubrics with a particular degree program major, but the real challenge in terms of making this distinctive and very successful is to get the general education piece of it right, guided by the essential learning outcomes and rubrics associated with that. And that's going to be hard, but doable, I really do believe. And then the last thing is, many moons ago, I was involved with the British Open University and the University of Maryland, moving curriculum from there over to the U.S. In a sequence course called People and Organizations. And that was all I don't know if you've ever seen the film Educating Rita. It's a very interesting precursor to older adult students and so on. I don't know, it's maybe 25 years ago or so. But one of the things I learned from my experience in teaching in that particular curriculum, I had tugboat captains and police chiefs and all kinds of interesting people in the course. I always made a space, usually once a week for a couple hours, for any students in those courses to come to the campus and talk with each other. And it amazed me. The attendance of that group of students was comparable to the ones that were supposed to come to class on campus. And it's kind of the flipped classroom notion. And I think it also makes us more comfortable that it gives exposure to the campus. It's a place for you to come and be with others. And maybe there's some other things that you'll decide you want to do or take, or things you want to get involved in on the campus. And you saw the wonderful examples of what's happening here at UW-La Crosse, who did a phenomenal job of talking about the stories of what education is about on a campus that you just can't replicate online. So I think as long as those kinds of things are guiding us, and I know that's what Ray and Aaron are doing, I think we'll hit the scalability.
Regent Milner.
One other comment, two comments about capacity. First comment is, in our last presentation on the MOOCs, they talked about the MOOC that was from Duke that had tens of thousands of entries and 300 completions. When we talk about capacity, what we're talking about is not only who comes in the door, but what the quality and the experience is that gets that percentage out. That's one comment. The second comment that I would direct to you is this. I think about capacity not only in terms of the numbers of students that take the courses, but the array of courses. And I personally believe it's better to start with a smaller array so that you can actually address the various issues that you have to do. But then, once those have been addressed, broadening that array becomes an important representation that we have made to the rest of the state in terms of what will be available for adult students returning to the campus.
Just a quick comment to that. Absolutely, we realize that for purposes of our business model, we're only looking at 10 programs because this is the infant stage. We're trying to learn a lot of things. But of the four major groupings in terms of business, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and information technology, we only have coursework in programs in three of those. The certificate in business and right. We're working aggressively to get a business degree, and we've had a lot of conversations both at the undergraduate and at the graduate level. We want to flesh those out. We've already had 2 or 3 or 4 more programs wanting to get involved from other campuses, and we'll be doing that. But the growing of these programs is really important. How big will that get? I don't know. We may not have over 20 or 25 programs at best, but they will be in program fields that are useful to the people of Wisconsin and the employers of this state, and help fill gaps in those program areas that those 750,000 people don't.
And just, again, a kind of expectation management component. This is not meant to replace the current program array we have now. In other words, Flex doesn't work well for everything. And so we're really aiming it towards the areas that are both most important for the state and the nation, and also those that we think there's really the model works best. One more point, Regina, about your 10,000 come in and only 300 come out. We can't do that with Flex. Flex has to be a program in which there is high success rate. I mean, just imagine the PR around the predatory, being predatory about enrollments, marketing aggressively and then just looking for tuition, and then, students succeed or fail on their own. That's not only would that be bad, as a PR thing for the campuses and for the system, but that would be inexcusable for this program. It's got to be a program where the success rates are another part of the model program. So,
President Riley.
Yeah, just maybe 3 concluding thoughts to build on things that people have said or done here today. One is, and Rick was just reinforcing this, it's been in the water. Let me say it more explicitly. We will make mistakes along the way with this program. We will be criticized, and we will make the mistakes in public, because everything we do is in public. And we will be criticized by parties for having made those mistakes. And we will watch and listen very carefully to the reaction of this board, individually and as a group, to those mistakes. And the reaction of this board, when they happen, not if, when they happen, and when the criticism comes, not if, will either push us back toward the 110% corporate responsibility guy model that Regent Tyler talked about, or will push us ahead saying, made the mistake, here's what we learned about it. Critics will listen, and we'll do better next time, but we're moving ahead with the support of our governing body. So you have now, but you will have an even bigger role in how successful we are, how quickly we get there when that starts to happen, and it will. Second point, stackable certificates or credentials. It's up there in the third bullet. Very lot of potential there, I think, in terms of what can we do to recognize competencies that people get on their way to a degree. We spend an awful lot of time now, don't we, in a sort of grossed up manner talking about, okay, what's your retention rate, what's your graduation rate? And the graduation rate means what percentage of your people get a baccalaureate degree or an associate degree. Interestingly, we know that if you have a high school diploma, you're going to make something like $750,000 to $1 million less over the course of a working lifetime than if you have a baccalaureate degree. But we also know that if you have a year's worth of college credit, you're on average going to make more than somebody who has only a high school diploma. If you have 2 years worth of college credit, you're going to make more money than somebody who has 1 year, and on up the line. So in that sense, the obsession with completion rates, while we need to have it, I'm not saying we should drop it, we shouldn't, but is a little misplaced, because we know that as you move up that ladder of getting the competencies and showing that you have them and getting the credit thereby, you become a more marketable employee and your career chances are enhanced. Can we recognize that with a new set of credentials or certificates that go beyond the traditional associate and baccalaureate degree? Another very interesting question, I think, in this process. And the third and last thing I'd say is I hope that in the discussions this morning, both on the MOOCs and on the Flex degree, this board, come away with a sense of what terrific forward-looking leadership we have throughout this system in regard to what we're doing here, and I hope you feel enlivened by it and proud of it and confident that we will have success with the support of all the chancellors. They've all been terrific in this regard, and it is frightening. It is scary. It is disruptive. And with all that, I think with the kind of really great talent we have working on these ideas in this system, we will get there, and we will get there ahead of many, many others. So I hope this has made you, while maybe a little unsettled, feel really good about what's going on in terms of the University of Wisconsin as a real leader in these regards.
Thank you, Kevin. We do. And thank you, Ray and Aaron, for excellent presentation and follow-up discussion.
And make one more comment.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
The support that we have received has been just tremendous from members of the board individually, from the legislature, from the governor's office, from governor's staff, from the public. It's just been overwhelming. And sometimes part of our challenge is to manage expectations. So sometimes those expectations are way up there, and I think, gee, I'm still on the first floor and the elevator isn't built yet. So thanks for your patience as well.
Thank you. All right. We will turn to Regent Whitburn for a report of the actions of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee.
Thank you, President Smith. The committee approved a 5-year contract between UW-Madison Athletics and the IMG College Seating Organization for stadium seats and seat backs at Camp Randall and elsewhere in Madison, and a 4-year extension of the dining services contract for UW-Oshkosh. Interestingly, we heard 2 articulate student leaders talk about the importance of increasingly flexible dining options for students consistent with the contract extension. UW-Madison offered an update on the institution's HR program policies. These policies will guide UW-Madison's implementation of the Regent policy on university personnel systems. They're similar to those operational policies for the balance of the UW system that were brought before and approved by the board in December. Our Associate Vice President Al Christ presented an overview of the UW system operational policy intended to guide and govern the distribution of pay plan salary adjustments at UW system institutions other than UW-Madison, should a pay plan become available in the near future. This operational plan provides chancellors with policy guidance on the distribution of Board of Regents biennial pay plans and for institutionally funded supplemental pay plans. The committee also heard highlights on the UW Trust Fund's annual benchmarking studies. Our investments are being handled well and effectively and measure positively with peer organizations. And the committee also accepted 4 new bequests to the university with a total value of about $696,000. The committee approved the UW Trust Fund's voting of the 2013 non-routine proxy proposals. Specifically, the dominant policy issues in this cycle are corporate political contributions and lobbying, the environment and sustainability, and human rights issues. The committee was provided with an update on recently completed and ongoing audit projects, along with information on current activities of the LAB impacting the UW system. Vice Chancellor Bazell indicated work is being done now with ETF to accelerate the frequency of reconciliations in connection with the challenges that we've been facing in and around the HRS system. Senior Vice President Morgan reported that the contract with Price Waterhouse should be in place soon. As you know, they will be doing a risk assessment for us in the immediate future. As to our WISNet and network services procurement issues, the procurement, we're told, is progressing according to schedule. Finally, we were happy to receive reports that all but one of our campuses have now completed implementation of the new policy requiring national criminal background checks on all new hires and certain other recruitments. On behalf of the committee, I am happy to move adoption of resolutions 12A1, A2, A3, 12C2, and C3.
Any desire to take any of those out? I heard in that Oshkosh deal, those students were trying to figure out where you ate your meals when you were there.
No, the issue was no Sunday dinners.
I heard that was
and they thought I was there last Sunday.
Maybe a few Sundays ago.
Reeve Memorial Union is still there. But you can get the bite to eat on Sunday. No.
All right. All in favor of those resolutions offered by Regent Whitbird, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, Regent Whitbird? Okay. Then I'll look to Regent Bartel for the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, President Smith. The committee met yesterday afternoon. We began with an excellent presentation by UW-La Crosse. Vice Chancellor Bob Hetzel demonstrated the progress that has been made on the La Crosse master plan from 5 years ago when we last looked at it. The campus is shaping up very nicely, and we were very proud of what's happened here. The committee then considered 5 resolutions, none of which were particularly controversial. Resolution 1.3.C had to do with UW-Madison Memorial Union renovation project to authorize acceptance and use of $2 million of gift funds to go into the phase 1 of that project. Resolution 1.3.D at Stout is a reimbursement of the City of Menominee for accessible improvements. 1.3.E was a request to release some building trust funds, $3.3 million, to begin preliminary plans and design reports for 2 science buildings, one at La Crosse, one at Stevens Point. 1.3.F was the approval of the all-agency maintenance and repair projects, total of about $5 million. And 1.3.G from UW-Madison was reimbursement of the City of Madison for accessible street and utility improvements along West Johnson Street. Mr. President, I would like to move the adoption of those resolutions, C, D, E, F, and G, on behalf of the committee.
Second.
Okay, been a motion and a second. Anybody want to take any one of those out? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Anything else?
And Associate Vice President Miller gave us some details on the 2013-15 capital budget, which we heard some of us in this room yesterday as well. We are very pleased with so far with what's happened with the capital budget as well as the operating budget, of course, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Bartel. Switch to the Education Committee. Regent Millman.
Thank you, President Smith. We had a report from Associate Vice President Stephen Cullison from the Office of Academic, Faculty, and Global Programming. The report required no action, but it provided the committee with an opportunity to have a robust and detailed discussion. Dr. Cullison's report detailed the current array of course offerings at UW campuses and how that array has evolved over the past 30 years in 35-year and 30-year increments. It was a very interesting evolution, both, he called it both a smile and a frown. And there was a decrease in the array of programming, but an increase. So right now our programming is about at the same level as it was 30 years ago. Now, that doesn't address the issue of how many students are involved in which programming, nor does it address the issue of how that programming, the internal changes that have happened within the course offerings. As a result, we had a very thoughtful discussion from the committee members and invited the provost to join us at the table so that they could give us their input. It was a useful discussion. It was particularly relevant given the fact that the system and our campuses and the Regents are focusing in on promoting economic development throughout the state. And we'll be able to hear a little bit about that in the Ready report that's coming up next. Our campuses have an array of courses that will be providing our students with the workforce development that the state will need, and also provide the students with what their lives will be in their both their first job and in subsequent jobs. And it was a good discussion about that, such as I would encourage my colleagues to read carefully the information that we have in the report in front of us, and the initial report of the minutes and the subsequent report that's more detailed that will come out on Monday. The committee, the sense of the committee members, along with the provost, is that this will continue to be an important focus of our work going into the future. The committee also unanimously approved the minutes from its February 2013 minutes meeting, along with 4 resolutions, which I'll now move on behalf of the committee for adoption by the full board. Resolution 1.1.A sub 2, authorizing the implementation of the BS in Pharmaceutical Sciences at UW-Madison. Resolution 1.1.A sub 3, authorizing the implementation of the Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science at UW-Stout. Resolution 1.1.A sub 4, authorizing the implementation of a master's degree in construction management at UW-Stout. And Resolution 1.1.A sub 5, approving the request from UW-Madison and UW-Milwaukee to the Vilas Trust estate.
Is there a second? Second. Anybody want to take any of those out separately? If not, please, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Last but not least, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, that concludes my report, and we adjourned promptly at 4:03.
4:03. We'll hear from the Ready Committee and its chair, Mr. Bradley.
Thank you. We began with Associate Vice President for Economic Development, Dave Bruchart, giving us a brief update on our economic development action plan. And Dave highlighted 3 specific elements of a roadmap that he has laid out. He calls them the 3 C's, are communication, connection, and capital. The communication comes in the form of a new web portal and also the use of Twitter to effectively communicate and work with the private sector community and other partners. The connection is our asset mapping, which has been done in cooperation with WEDC to help match the UW system expertise with Wisconsin business industry cluster groups. And the capital part of it was Dave going through the details of the Economic Development Incentive Grant Program that is proposed as part of Governor Walker's budget. UW System Assistant Vice President Christine Andrews and also UW-La Crosse Provost Heidi McPherson highlighted the UW Systems and UW-La Crosse's undergraduate student research efforts. And both of them noted that UW-La Crosse will be hosting the National Conference on Undergraduate Research later this month that will bring in only about 3,000 people to the La Crosse community. That's a pretty big event. Chris Andrews also overviewed the systems work with the Center for Undergraduate Research, and she noted that the UW system was one of only 2 systems in the nation that were awarded a grant for its efforts in undergraduate research. And she said that the ultimate goal is for the UW system to make it for the system to be the national leader in undergraduate research. And speaking of undergraduate research, we heard from Dr. Scott Cooper from UW-La Crosse. He's the undergraduate research director, and he highlighted the impact that undergraduate research has both on and off the campus. There were 2 presenters, both of them UWL students. One of them was Adam Pugh, who is a current student, and the second was Emily Ross, who is a 2012 UW-La Crosse alumna, who is in biological food safety research with a local company, growing out of an internship in undergraduate research that she had with that company. Quite a success story. I think all of you realize the READY Committee is not quite 1 year old, and as a new committee of the board, it has been in a fact-gathering stage. We have reached out to establish, through Dave Bruchart and his system staff, relationships with the campuses in the topics that I think are going to come down the pike before the READY Committee. We've also, Dave has worked very hard in establishing a good working relationship with his counterparts at WEDC. And another thing that we've been doing in our committee meetings in this inaugural year has been to provide an opportunity for business leaders who have an opportunity to use the research and scholarship of both our faculty and students and hear from them just how that experience has been going. So we did that again yesterday, and Regent Tracy Rebar moderated a panel discussion that included John Biondi, who is the president and CEO of Exolve in Middleton. John has had a lot of relationships in working with UW-Platteville and also UW-Madison. He's intimately involved with the licensing arrangements through WARF and also through WISIS. Another panelist was Dave Kettner, who is the CEO of Fused Innovation in NENA. Fused Innovation tries to provide practical solutions to business owners by tapping into the intellectual ability or the academic problem-solving functions of faculty members. So he and his company have had relationships with almost every one of our campuses. And he also had a perspective of having worked with faculty members at campuses outside the UW system. Another panelist was Dr. Jay Ellingson, who is the Director of Food Safety and Quality Assurance at Quick Trip here in La Crosse. They have a huge food safety laboratory, And he has the perspective of having worked with a number of graduate students as opposed to undergraduates in some of the problem solving. And he talked about the plan for Quick Trip and their food safety laboratory operations and their whole effort to try to make most of the food that they sell at their stores. That plan involves tapping in more and more to the expertise of UW system. And then finally, Julie Wagner, who happens to be a graduate of UW-La Crosse, is the Vice President of Research and Development for Century Foods International, which is a division of Hormel. These panelists talked about their experiences in intellectual property and exchanges and projects that they have had with various campuses. And all in all, they're satisfied. They have had good experiences, and I got the sense that all of them expect to continue this kind of work. But they did agree on three things that they said need more attention on our part. One of them is they said that at times there can be a difference in expectations about project timelines. And they're fair in that criticism in saying that they're in business and they have a certain timeline in mind, but they recognize that faculty members aren't focused full-time on working on their projects. A couple of them realize that, especially at our comprehensive campuses, our professors have comparatively heavy teaching assignment responsibility, and in many cases they're doing this because of their devotion to continuing with their research and because of their devotion to giving their students an educational opportunity. But still, that's something that we need to work on if we're going to continue to have any success in this, especially with our comprehensive campuses. Another challenge that they talked about was a difference in expectations as to outcome. So the business owner is not too excited about the process, as just focused on, get the answer, get the solution to my problem. Whereas, of course, an academic person is quite interested in the process, in the teaching experience, and there was one case where the business owners said that the professor that he was working with was not interested in the final outcome and never did get a final outcome, but was very interested in the process that was leading to an outcome. So that, I think these are understandable differences. The business owner and the faculty members and the students are just coming from different spots, but we need to be sensitive to that. Their final comment is something that we are going to have to work on, and that is what they called the one-size-fits-all licensing agreement. If they're going to be working with WARF or if they're going to be working with WISIS, from their standpoint, especially a smaller company, there needs to be more of a tailored licensing agreement that fits their needs. And the one-size-fits-all, like I said, as they characterize it, is a problem, and they said that that is something that we should be working on. So we will be working on that, and you can expect to hear from us on all three of those areas in the future. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Regent Bradley. I'll call on Regent Roberts to read the resolution of appreciation to UWL.
Whereas the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System is pleased to have held its April 2013 meeting at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, learning how the UW-La Crosse is moving forward together. And whereas the Regents commend the University of La Crosse for its commitment to undergraduate research, including the campus's selection as host for the National Conference on Undergraduate Research, an event that welcomes students and faculty from more than 300 colleges and universities. And whereas the board members are impressed by UW-La Crosse's commitment to instruction and applaud the college's business administration for being the first state university or college and only the second business school nationally to receive the Council for Higher Education's award for outstanding institutional practice in student learning outcomes. And whereas UW-La Crosse has initiated massive open online course MOOCs in mathematics funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which has enticed students ages 11 to 83 from 40 states and 40 countries. And whereas the Regents appreciate hearing an update on the campus master plan and are pleased UW is a leader in green building initiatives, with Centennial Hall and Eagle Hall being both earning gold ratings in leadership in energy and environmental design. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents hereby extends its sincere appreciation for the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse for its generous hospitality extended to by Chancellor Joe Gao and the entire campus community. If I may, in a personal note, Chancellor Gao, the presentation you made yesterday, oh boy, brought tears to my eyes. And I could not have ever been more proud of being an alumni from the school and a member of this board.
Well, are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Regent Feldwell.
I'd like to take just a moment. Chancellor Gao did this last night in a much different manner than I will do it today. But and it's a little awkward because we don't know the timing of appointments. We know the outcome of elections, so congratulations, Tony. But I'd like to just take a moment to recognize some of our colleagues here. And there's a possibility that this will be their last Board of Regent meeting for Regents Smith and Bartell. I understand the governor is ready to make some appointments. I don't know who. And there's also a chance it'll be the last meeting for Regent Pointer and Regent Tyler. Each of these regents will be officially honored at an upcoming board meeting, but I still wanted to take this opportunity now. And I think I speak on behalf of all my fellow board members that I would like to thank them for their service. We all know that being a regent involves much more than 8 board meetings a year, and each of the regents I mentioned has devoted themselves to this job in a way that I aspire to. I know that they will continue to work actively as regents and actively supporting the UW system and their respective universities. But I just wanted to say thank you now to those people. So.
Thank you, Mike, very much for those kind words. We'll now take a 10-minute break. Yes, Regent Higgins. Sorry.
Not on such a poignant point, but I do want to point out that Regent Milner and I, along with Regent Falvo, had the opportunity to visit UW River Falls on Wednesday, just prior to this meeting. UW River Falls, like UW-La Crosse, is very committed to undergraduate research. Mm-hmm. And to have the opportunity to listen to students both here at La Crosse and there at River Falls talk about their efforts was enlightening and pretty awesome. But one of the aspects that we really need to emphasize, I think, is the fact that all of these students are mentored by faculty members who do this without additional compensation and essentially out of the goodness of their hearts. And I think it's important for us to recognize this is another example of our faculty who are so committed to their professions that they really do go above and beyond the call of duty in many ways, this being one of them. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Anything else? Okay, now we'll take a 10-minute break and come back and go into closed session. Thanks.